Welcome to Mixing Memos from B7A Audio. I'm your host, Christopher Scott Cooper. Hello everyone, and welcome to Mixing Memos at B7A Audio. Here in my studio, I mix in Pro Tools, but I sum out to an SSL X-Desk, which is basically a 9000J super analog circuit. It's a summing mixer with no EQs, just line level amps, 4 aux sends and panning, and with the expander, it takes it from 8 channels to 24 channels, which allows me to sum my outputs. The reason I like this, it sounds more open. The SSL has this beautiful punchy sound, and that's kind of where we're going today. We're going to talk about Plugin Alliance and the Brainworx new BX Console E, which is an emulation of the classic SSL 4000E series. Now, this also has another element to it. They've introduced a G series to this as well. That openness and depth I referred to earlier is the variance between channels on the analog desk. Each channel may be made the same with the same components, but there are minute variations in frequency response between each channel. These variances create minor phase anomalies, which to our ear adds depth and color. With the DSP capabilities available to plugin creators these days, emulations can now give those variances within a plugin, which is pretty amazing. BX Console E is an emulation of the classic SSL 4000E series, with the added aspect of the G series introduced later as an optional voicing. Many top engineers of the 80s and 90s revered the 4000E and G series as mixing consoles for their clarity, punch, and capabilities, and in particular the G series bus compressors. The BX Console E has all the features of a 4000E with optional G console features and some very nice controls not found on the actual console. The controls are laid out in a manner similar to the channel strips, starting with the filters top left. Of particular note are the ×3 and /3 switches. The latter drops the low-pass filter range to 7.3 kHz to 1 kHz. The Dyne-SC does the same thing to the low-pass filter and puts both into the sidechain input of the dynamic section. The compressor section is next. Of note are the high-pass and release 2 pots at the bottom. The high-pass filter is a sidechain input high-pass for the compressor, deactivated when set to minimum value. And the release 2 adds in a smoother release option. This was automatic in the actual console, but here you can mix it in, which is a nice feature. One nice option, not on the console, is you now have a mix knob in the compressor section. You can add in and maybe do a little parallel compression. At the bottom, the expander gate section with a nice hysteresis control to fine-tune your gate dynamics. Dyne button puts the dynamics into the path. The G button selects the optional G dynamics instead of the E. This is where we get into tonal shaping with different tonalities that were never available. And the key button for an external key to the sidechain. Listen here on the snare how it changes the tone and response by altering between the E and G compressors. The EQ section has 2 elements that are key here. I'll skip over the controls of the EQ. I think by now you should know what those are. First, the EQ type button selects between brown or black type EQs. Often the brown is considered a smoother response and the black a bit more rock and roll. And the sidechain and pre buttons at the bottom. Sidechain is the sidechain input to dynamics, and pre turns off the sidechain and puts the EQ pre the dynamics. On the G channel, the EQ type switches between the pink and orange EQs, and they are very different. You also get a factor of 3 switch for the bands in the mid-range. I use the G on the overheads in this example. The master section has the usual metering, including gate and expander and gain reduction metering for the comp at the bottom. The main meter can be either in or out, depending on what you select. A nice big fader for output gain adjustments. But let's look at the top here. an input gain adjustment, and something called the V-gain, which essentially adds in the self-noise of the channel strip just like on a real console. Add some in, and use the gate to keep it a little clean in your mix. Might be surprised at the tonal shaping capabilities you have there. Since the input gain does not drive the saturation of the pre, we have instead a small control pot called THD that can add in that characteristic from subtle to not so subtle. Remember earlier when I spoke of the subtle phase and response differences between channels in an analog console? Well, Brainworx has put this ability into the plugin. They call this tolerance modeling technology, TMT. Notice the number above the main meter and the two buttons on the right labeled Random Channel. One will change your channel strip to another channel strip with varied response, so I can go from 49 to 12. All will change all instances of the plugin in your session. I say that again. All changes all instances of the plugin within your session. Caution with that last one. Let's check it out in action on a drum kit I'm mixing for a John Ellis recording done in Spain. I will click on the random all so that you can hear the subtle changes in how the mix responds if you just change the channel strip. It's amazing to me to see the flexibility we have with having two different consoles from two different eras combined into one plugin and being able to pick and choose which of those aspects we like. This is where we've come with DSP processing, and it's pretty cool. The random aspect, the TMT, the tolerance modeling, is also a cool aspect. Set up your mix, get it the way you like, and then randomly shift all the channels and listen to the response. This is an element that I feel has always been sort of missing from digital in recent years. The random aspect, the happy accidents. I miss that. So, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again. Cheers.